Good afternoon, everyone. And let me first, thank you for your warm words of welcoming and congratulate the organizers on an important forum. The last time I was in this part of the world was pre-pandemic. It was high time. Myself and many of my colleagues could come back. And I want also to acknowledge publicly and thank our independent board member, Nicolas, without whom I would not probably be here today. So thank you for bringing me here, my friend. It's very important. So I try and build upon the previous conversations and touch upon potential pathways to advance the global governance of AI. A few key words, maybe. One of my approach is going to try and reconcile the how and the what. And for that, I was born and raised in France. I'm therefore a European. I believe in the European Union, and I believe in the way 27 countries who had been waging war for decades, if not centuries, among themselves, found a political pathway and a socio-technical pathway to peace and prosperity and unity. And this pathway that I learned at university, much like many of you are doing here today, is anchored on a key principle, functionalism, trying to build solidarity from key functions, such as peace and prosperity, and deconstructing them into specific goals and pathways. And I'm going to try and touch upon a few of the macro, micro, and meso approaches to that in terms of the governance artifact that we are going to try and have to build over the next decade is nothing less but a governance regime complex. We should not seek perfection. We should not seek perfect cleanliness. It's going to be imperfect. It's going to be dirty. It doesn't need to work perfectly because it is there to represent the diversity and the pluralism of the world. Anytime and every time you see a governance regime which is too clean and too automatic and too perfect, my advice to you is run away. It shall not work, and it will potentially be dangerous. Totalizing view of governance is an artifact as we pursue regime complex, which is dangerous. Before I start, maybe a bias or a few biases. Independent think and do think. So our mission is to try and align AI through better governance. So we're pursuing alignment. What that means, we could spend a few days on that, obviously. Who aligns for what? Who is the we? And governance. I'm part of those who, over the past 10 years, has helped coin the notion of AI governance. When I started 10 years ago, and we were saying we need to govern the rise of AI, you know, people like Wendell Wallach understood and were leaders in that, but many other people were thinking that we were nuts. Now the field has emerged, and I'm very happy that the title of this conference is International AI Cooperation and Governance. This is exactly what we ought to be doing. We're trying to do that, putting the pursuit of institutional innovation at the center of what we do and being outcome focused. And we have key target audiences that we do as we design our interventions and we deploy those interventions into AI governance projects, such as trying to advocate for a strong EU AI Act, because the European market, with its critical mass of 500 million consumers, if it decides, and it is doing that right now, to put together a legally binding regime on foundation models, will have a global influence. Local effects, local actions can have global effect if you have a critical mass. What we're trying to do is really to target 4 audiences if we are to arrive at the outcomes of alignment that we so desire. Obviously, developers of AI systems, but also deployers of AI systems, crucially investors in AI systems, oftentimes in the AI governance discussions that's the missing child of the discussion. And I have not spotted any investor in the room or in the talk, and my humble advice to the organizers of this forum and future forum would be to try and work hard to bring the investors at the table, because without them, you cannot align incentives. And obviously, regulators. When you say that, what we mean by regulators is something like from lawmaking to lawyering. So the 3 branches of governments and all the practitioners that actually deliver these functions. So that's my bias here. So we have a behavioralist approach. In whatever we try and do, in the 10 principles I'm going to try and present today in the short period I have, my underlying argument is that these are designed to influence the behaviors of these actors. So our theory of change is a behavioralist theory of change. I know it sounds a bit creepy, and that's why we need to have a solid ethical framework. But if we are to deliver what we have to deliver, and if we are to consider that the governance artifact that we have in front of us right now is increasingly a race dynamics and the race towards artificial general intelligence. I'll skip that intro and context because we don't have much time, but maybe a few like ongoing, when we say ongoing international cooperation efforts, and what are the pathways? What should we seek? Well, number one, we should seek convergence. It looks both easy and impossible. I know there's a bit of cognitive dissonance when we frame convergence, but it's totally possible. I mean, did China publish a regulation, a binding regulation on generative AI? Yes, they did. Is the Euro-AI Act going to integrate something on generative AI and foundation models? Yes. So these mutually reinforcing cocktails, hopefully smart cocktails of self, soft, and indeed hard regulatory mechanisms are possible, and we can have them converge among one another. Second is, because of the velocity of the magnitude of this governance artifact, we have in front of us an unprecedented effort to produce and to collaborate over around institutional innovations. We have 19th century mindset, 20th century institutions for 21st century needs that does not gel easily. Third is, as I said, local actions and global effects. And third, the need to build bridges. That's why I'm here today. To build bridges in how we can translate these principles into action without thinking a perfectly harmonized governance regime, respecting pluralism and our cultural singularities, but eventually building the global governance regime that we need, without which we are not going to be able to steer safely the race towards AGI. Well, the shiny objects first. When we talk about global governance, from a functionalist perspective, you'll hear increasingly three, in a way, key policy functions and three institutional models thrown at you. You have heard, and you will continue to hear a lot, about an IPCC for AI. You have heard, and you'll continue to hear a lot, about the CERN for AI. 3 minutes? Really? You want me to do this in 3 minutes? Okay. Well, when did I start? 4 minutes ago. Okay, I'll accelerate. I'll try and do it as fast as you can. And I will share my slides. There's loads there because I designed for, I think, 20 minutes. But that's okay. I'll stick to the timeline. And so you have the shiny little objects here. Again, my recommendation to you is try and stay away from focusing too much of your governance and institutional engineering attention on the shiny objects. Focus on the functions. What is an IPCC for AI? In terms of function, it is there to assess in a coordinated way and deliver policy advice because we have in front of us a highly volatile environment. And if we seek to adapt the IPCC in AI, we cannot reproduce the same model. It is to be emulated. It is to be adapted and not reproduced blindly. So one thing, for example, that the IPCC did not succeed in delivering, and that we absolutely need to deliver for AI governance, is the way in which we deal with gray literature. For example, the AI Alignment Forum, which is a great blog forum that is delivering, I think, very interesting evidence-based set of policy advice, has to be considered in the State of Science report that Yoshua Bengio is going to produce, which, by the way, is the prototype, is the embryo for an IPCC for AI. CERN, what is the policy function that it's trying to deliver? A scientific collaboration and knowledge production of something which is both needed and powerful. Well, it won't be easy to bring to bear and to implement in the context of AI because of the underlying political economy. The reason why nations came together to build the Large Hadron Collider, this big metrology instrument that we have in Switzerland, is because the market failed at delivering this kind of instruments, and that the fiscal lever were absolutely needed for science to move forward. Is it the case in AI? Well, I'm not so sure. So if we are to build this scientific collaboration knowledge production on AI interpretability, for example, we need to find a way to work and leverage the market incentives as they are and to plug the gaps where they are. And third, an IEA for AI. And this one is the one I favor the least. Why? Do we need regulation and verification? Yes, of course. But do we need to do that in a way that delivers the perceptions at the end of the road that some countries will win and some countries will lose? If we do that, that's a recipe for disaster. And so in how we adapt and build that regulatory and verification function, it is of paramount importance that we try and, if the artifact to govern is the race dynamics towards AGI, we need to create the conditions for people to cooperate on that race dynamics and not to feel that, oh, we have 2 more years to deliver AGI, after which we'll never be able to deliver AGI. And last but not the least, the nuclear metaphor is a binary metaphor, destruction or electricity. The AI metaphor is way more complicated than that. AI is potent, like the nuclear, and like the atom, but is also pervasive and highly proliferative in nature. Do you carry a bag of uraniums with you? I don't. Do you carry models? We all do in our pockets. And borrowing them from the cloud, or coding them from the cloud. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. I won't have time to cover these, but maybe I want to cover a few of these principles. So what we've tried to do at the Future Society in trying to engineer a path to convergence is to start building a list of 10 meso principles around which we could engineer global governance. And I can take maybe 2 examples. Do we want the executive order, the EUA Act, and the Chinese regulation to engineer behaviors that put trustworthiness and safety by design? Yes, I think we do need that. If we are still putting at the center of our techno-scientific table unsupervised learning on steroid at scale, if we're still doing shaman AI, because let's be clear, we're not really doing engineering with this kind of large language models. It looks to me more like we're breeding animals than we're engineering artifacts. So if we know so little about the artifacts we're breeding, but we know they're potent, we'd better build them putting safety and trustworthiness by design. And that's not easy to do. Is it easy in the land of innovation that the great country of America is, to say that we're going to govern and constrain research and development? Of course it's not. Do we want to prevent people in the pursuit of knowledge? No, that's key to freedom. And yet, we need to be able to govern research and development. Last but not the least, maybe in a way that will respond to what Sean was presenting before, these governance cocktails need to be tech and channel neutral. I don't care whether we're talking about LLMs of that size or this size. Yes, I care in terms of the progressiveness of their risk, but regardless of whether they are hybrids, they are full machine learning, or they are other types of technology, it's important that we impact those models according to their risks level. Same with the distribution channels. I have a lot of respect for open source, but if you're open sourcing a high-risk model, you need to have guardrails. It cannot be disseminated like that. So this tech and channel neutrality is an important thing. And obviously, third-party scrutiny. So we also speak about targeted responsibility and accountability. Obviously, the more powerful, the more responsibility. With great powers come great responsibilities. They need to be evidence-based. And they need, for this evidence-based approach, to be progressive. What I mean by that is that if you are, and that's a bit what I heard with RSPs from Anthropic, the moment you put, or you're designing a system with potential catastrophic risks, the burden of the proof and the burden of demonstration of its proof of being safe needs to rest on the designer, not on society. That's an obvious thing. But even for those who deploy like smaller models, like of several billions parameters, because we're doing what I call shaman AI, you absolutely need to, even if you cannot deliver mechanistic interpretability, to find proxies and shortcuts towards interpretability by documenting data, documenting the design architecture, and pursuing robust model evaluation. There is a lot more, but I'll stop there and look forward to discussing that further. Thank you very much.